Strong looks different for each of us, and it's time to put focus on our unique journeys that get us there. This space, created weekly, is for athletes to improve their mindset in order to better navigate challenges that come up in sport and in different seasons of life. On this show, we ask the questions that lead to better answers and have the conversations that truly matter. This is the Becoming Your Strong podcast. Hey, you guys, welcome back to another week of the podcast. As always, super grateful to have you here, especially if this is the first time that you are listening to the show. If this is the first time that you're listening to the show, I love to start off with talking about the Becoming Your Strong moment of the week. We are doing things every single week to persevere and be resilient. And it's time for us to not only celebrate ourselves, but to celebrate each other for the steps that we are taking, even when the odds are against us. And so this week, I want to shout out one of my clients, Stacy, who did just that. So this past week, I received a text from her, and she just mentioned that she's been in this funk, this total rut, and it's been really hard to get out of. Like, her workouts haven't been going as well as she's wanted to. Emotionally at work, things have just been really tough. Crazy stuff going on with the kid, just as far as like having a bunch of track meets, and just life is kind of all over the place and is not necessarily happening to her, but is happening for her. And it's just a lot to take in. And so we had the first week of test-ins for a competition series called Cirrus Breaks, and this is her first year doing it. And so she messaged me saying, I'm just not sure that I have it in me to go on Friday night and do the first test, and I might just give myself a couple days to like recoup, try and get out of this funk, and then go test in on a different day. And I told her, hey, I think that you need to listen to whatever your gut is telling you, and I totally understand that right now, your headspace is just not there. Like, you have to trust yourself as an athlete, that you know yourself better than anyone else and that you know exactly what it is that you need. Now, on the flip side of that, the worst case scenario that could happen is that you show up, you get to be around people where the energy is electric and they're cheering each other on, and you just get another workout in. Right? It doesn't have to be a PR. It doesn't have to be the best time ever. You don't even have to fully finish the full workout, right? It could just be show up, get that like love and inspiration and just good vibes from other people. And then if you're happy with what you did, great bonus. If you are like, hey, I've got more in the tank and I want to try again, you have 2 other testing days to try again. And so she chewed on that and she ended up coming. And not only did she finish what was a really tough, spicy workout that a lot of people time capped on, she PR'd it from her original simulation of it. And she just was like, it was exactly what it is that I needed. Like, I just needed to come here and push through that feeling of I don't want to, and I'm so tired and I'm emotionally spent. And what I got out of it was so much more than I could have imagined. And I think that that is such a powerful thing for all of us, right? Like, in life, things are never going to be ideal. Like, we hope that we put all of this training and all this work in so that when it's time to finally race and to do the big test, that we're going to feel our best and we're not going to be injured and we got the best sleep the night before and everything worked out in our favor. And that is totally not the case. In fact, it's always like less than ideal than that. I cannot tell you how many times where it's been like days before I go and travel to Connecticut to compete and my hip starts hurting again, or this ankle starts to cramp and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's always something, right? And so you have to be able to show up in the times where things are not ideal. And that is every day. That's what we do every single day. Our schedule is bonkers, right? So we have to figure out times to make it work, even if that means splitting up our training sessions into 3 instead of 1 straight block. That means that, hey, I didn't get the best sleep. I can't give 100% in this today as far as like what I would normally give to this workout, but I'm going to give at least a percentage and show up for it. So that way I can say, hey, I showed up for myself today. There are just so many times in situations where things are not ideal. And if we just show up when they're not ideal, when it comes to these bigger moments, you will absolutely shock yourself because you persevered. You showed that you were resilient. And I think that that's truly the definition of becoming your own version of strong. is showing up when things aren't ideal and showing that perseverance and showing that resilience. So I'm just really proud of you, Stacey, for what you did, not just the outcome, but just the fact that you literally walked out of that building glowing and feeling like yourself again, because you realized that you were so much stronger than you gave yourself credit for sometimes, and that the power of just being around other people and not doing it alone, and again, just showing up when it's not ideal, it was a really cool moment to watch. So I'm really stoked for you. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and jump into the topic for today. These topics the last couple of weeks have all had like this similar thread within them. And so hopefully I don't sound like a broken record here, but hopefully each one is building on each other's and you're getting something out of every single episode here. But what really inspired the episode this past week is I feel like this week, in relation to the past couple of weeks, I would say, I just have noticed people reaching out to me a lot more about how in the heck are you doing this? How are you like defying all odds? Like, for example, I did my Cirrus Bricks test in for the endurance test on Friday night, and I looked calm and cool and collected. I was rowing slower. I was skiing slower than everyone out there. Like, my cadence looked like I was basically falling asleep. And yet I was the first person to finish every single machine, and I was minutes ahead of people. And so far, there's still one more person that needs to test later this week, but I have the top time by like 2 whole minutes. And I've had people like ask me at the very end, like, how did you do that? Like, how in the world were you able to just look like you weren't even trying, and yet you were just so far ahead of people? I also had some of my athletes just reach out to me and ask me questions. They were just getting curious. And so all of that to say, I wanted to talk about how I've become unstoppable and how to become the unstoppable athlete for yourself in your journey, wherever you're at. I am not the strongest. I am not the fastest. I am not the one with the most experience by any means, but there are certain things that I've done on repeat that have helped me step into the season of just totally kicking ass as an athlete. And I want to share some of those things with you today. And I also, before I even like jump into some of those characteristics, habits, etc., like, becoming unstoppable doesn't mean like becoming elite. It doesn't mean becoming the absolute best in XYZ profession, right? It's not necessarily about the best or the cream of the crop. It's about you being able to not tell yourself or doubt yourself or quit on yourself when things get hard, right? It's you being able to push past and be that resilient athlete in any situation that you find yourself in. And so that's what I want you to think of, is like, just because I'm unstoppable in one way doesn't mean that you can't be unstoppable in your own way, right? Like, so you have to kind of define what being an unstoppable athlete looks like for you. I'm just going to give you the characteristics and the habits that have helped me become my most unstoppable version. So I just would encourage you to think about that, is what does unstoppable, just like how I ask you every week, what does strong look like to you? Think about what being unstoppable looks like to you and feel really good about that and feel like you have something that you can genuinely identify with, not necessarily what I identify with. So the first thing that has helped me become my version of unstoppable is asking for help. For the people that constantly say, I'm sorry and I feel guilty about, burdening you and taking some of your time, just asking for help in general, you need to know that there are so many people out there that are waiting and praying that you ask for their help. Like, it gives them so much joy and purpose in life when they get to help someone else. So how dare you rob someone else of that experience? And I know that sounds kind of a little harsh, but sometimes I need to put that into perspective when I'm afraid of asking for help, of like, there is someone out there that quite literally craves this, and it would make their day even that much better, their life have so much more purpose. So how dare I rob people of those opportunities, especially because I know I'm that person. I'm the same way, where when people ask me for help, I feel needed and I feel like I have, like I said, purpose. I'm so excited when people ask me for assistance. And so why would I ever want to take that away from someone else? Right? The other thing too that I have to remember is that if I ask for help and that person kind of rubs me the wrong way, they decline, like they have hesitancy around helping me and providing me with their time. Like, I know that there's people out there that have to protect their peace, protect their time. And if they're like, hey, I really want to help, but I just can't do it right now, that's one thing, right? But for those people that like quite literally just decline, like saying, nope, that's just not my realm, you need to remember that those aren't your people. And thank God you know that, right? Because now you're not spending time on the wrong people, in my perspective. And so don't, again, rob other people the joy and the opportunity to give you help when that brings them passion and purpose to their life. And don't rob yourself of the opportunity to genuinely get things that are going to help you to level up. Now, for the people on the flip side of that have a big ego when it comes to asking for help and worry that they'll be seen as weak or less than, I need for you to know this. You can get to some outcomes pretty dang quick if you hustle hard. But at some point, you are going to hit a ceiling. And at that point, you have a choice. You have that fork in the road to either keep going 100 miles an hour to only gain a few miles at a time, or to link arms with others and go further than you ever could have imagined. And that was the big switch for me. Was my first year in DECA, I did it alone. And mostly because I kind of was the only one that had these goals. And so I kind of had to do them alone. There wasn't a ton of resources out there for me. But then when I went to World Championships and realized how many people are really good at this and how many people I could ask to link arms with me to help me, I was like, this is it. I don't want to worry about the time. I don't want to worry about the money. I want to put all of that aside, knowing that those are the variables that keep people locked down from experiencing life on full throttle. I want to put all of that to the side. And I just want to invest in myself and invest in this opportunity for me to do something big. Because I know if I do that, it could quite literally change my life. And that's when I reached out to Kevin. And that's when we built the relationship. And last year I had the biggest breakout year that I could have ever asked for. Like, it was absolutely amazing, right? And now, like, I've shared this in other episodes, it's trickled down into so many things where I am a legitimately known DECA coach. I'm a very well-respected athlete. People come to me for help and for guidance because they know my reputability. And just like everything that I've overcome and everything that I've accomplished in a year, like, just because I chose to get out of my own way and ask for help, like, I'm guys, take it from experience. You have to do this. This is a habit that you have to vulnerably and courageously step into every single day, regardless of which camp you sit in, whether it's I have a big ego and I don't want to be seen as weak, or I feel guilty about burdening other people for their time. Remember, this choice is ultimately yours, and your success is dependent on it. So I can say confidently from experience, do not rob yourself of these outcomes you are destined for just because of the fear and the ego. So that's the first thing. The second thing is always learning, always having a learner's cap. How can I just, gain as much information, squeeze the lemon as much as I possibly can to get as many perspectives as possible to make me great? Last week, I had one of my athletes, Sam. Hi, Sam. I know you're listening to this because you listen every week. She's always asking me questions, and she's always saying, I'm sorry to take your time. I'm sorry to bother you. And so, Sam, hopefully you listened loud and clear to that last piece. But one thing that I keep constantly telling her when she's like, thank you so much for all your help. Like, again, I'm sorry that I'm such a bother and asking all these questions. I told her that the reason why I was so good at what I did last year and why I had the year that I had last year is because I never stopped asking questions. I never stopped being curious about how I could get better within my craft. I was asking questions to Kevin. I was asking questions to other people on the Underdog Fitness Podium Chasers team. I was doing research on YouTube and Instagram, literally anything I could get my hands on. Like when I had a free moment, I was doing some sort of growth, whether it was in mindset, whether it was like physical abilities, whether it was in just learning anything that I possibly could about DECA, the sport, how to become a better athlete overall. I did that day in and day out, and I had no remorse in doing that. And I told her that she is exemplifying that to a T. And that is going to take her so freaking far if she allows it to, right? Don't stop doing those things. I'm telling you, this is the number one thing that I believe that got me to where I'm at today, and is a habit that is absolutely necessary to greatness. Okay. So if you feel like you went an entire day and you didn't learn a single thing, whether it's in regard to the race that you're doing, whether it's in regards to who you are as an athlete, learning something about yourself, anything under the sun, quite literally, if you feel like you did not have any curiosity or any chances to actually go and learn something, you've taken off that cap, and we need to put it back on, and we need to do this consistently day in and day out. The next thing is doing the boring things. This is something that I talked about over the last week or two. Is I just had this moment where I was thinking about this, of like, what was so different last year when I was training at this time of the year versus what's going on right now in my life. And I think about like when I first started training with Kevin, and every single week I would have some sort of long aerobic flow, probably even twice a week. And it would be like, do 1,000 meters on this machine and do 1,000 meters on this and do 1.5 million calories on this machine. And I was like, oh, these are so boring and daunting and long. And I just, like at first, right, you have the honeymoon phase where you're like, I'll do whatever. And then you step into the, okay, this is really boring phase, right? After a few doses of it, you're kind of over it. And I was thinking about how many times I did that in the first 6 months of the year. And then I started to see some results. And then we took a different direction where I stepped into a strength block and started to slowly build back up into world championship, what's the word I'm looking for? Shape. And then I was just thinking, at the beginning of the year of just like, okay, like I have a really good engine, but it's not like the engine that I think that I am capable of having. Like I think that I have more, and obviously all of us have the ability to do more, but I feel like something is just missing from my routine. And so again, I had that reflection, and I was like, I was doing so much more just like long aerobic sessions where, the goal wasn't to kill myself. The goal was just to consistently keep moving. And my aerobic capacity, my engine, just went through the freaking roof. Like after just 2 to 3 months of doing that. And I'm not doing that nearly as much anymore. And of course, you have some of the top level elite athletes, like for example, Meg Jacoby talked about it on the RMR podcast a couple weeks ago, about how literally what she does every day is 60 to 90 minutes, sometimes upward of 2 hours of just long aerobic zone 2 work. Boring as shit. Your butt probably goes numb if you're sitting on a bike doing these things or sitting on a row erg. But it's just the consistency of showing up and doing the fundamentals, getting really good at the form, getting really good at being able to breathe, just getting really good at working for a long period of time and putting in that volume. And so that's what I would say for you guys is like, don't sit there and try and recreate the wheel or reinvent the wheel. Do the fundamental boring things that ultimately end up becoming your building blocks. And those building blocks, you guys, never change. You'll get a little faster. You'll get to do things a little bit harder. You can kind of, put some different combinations together. But ultimately, there are those fundamental building blocks that you cannot stray away from, right? Think about Kobe Bryant. He just got really good at doing the few things that mattered. And those few things that mattered were probably boring as shit. So again, this is just that call to go back to the fundamentals and live there and enjoy it. Even if that means you have to turn on a lot of YouTube videos, like podcasts and things just to get you through those long sessions, just do it. I promise that it will pay off. The next thing, I have a few more for you guys. This one, I actually am going to give credit to Sally McRae for. I was listening to her podcast this morning, and this is something that I would say I am working on getting better at. I don't fully have this locked in, but it's this idea and this mindset of expecting that it's going to hurt. Let that sink in. Having this mindset as an athlete that it is going to hurt. What you are about to do is going to hurt. Now, this one's like tricky in my brain, right? Because if I tell myself, oh my gosh, this is going to hurt so bad, this is going to suck so bad, it sets me up sometimes for failure where I am counting myself out and I am doubting myself and I just feel unmotivated and no longer want to do it. It's now being able to find the balance of being realistic with yourself, of saying, it's going to hurt, but I know that I can overcome because XYZ. And that's where your book of proof, that's where showing up consistently for yourself in the unideal situations really matters. That's when all of this stuff comes to the surface, and it's either going to help you or it's going to hurt you. If you didn't show up when things were hard, it's going to be really hard for you to show up when it's hard, when it hurts that badly. If you didn't celebrate yourself for all of the things that you were doing right and all of the things that you overcame, and you don't constantly give yourself praise and credit for all that you're doing, it's going to be really hard to find that proof when you need it, right? Especially when it hurts and you need to tell yourself something positive like, I can do this because I've done this before. I get pretty freaked out when I'm doing a training session, maybe it's a sim of some sort, and it starts to hurt a lot earlier than I think or than was originally expected. And because of that, I think that, crap, I'm not ready. I won't be ready for this race. Or I even think that if it hurts, I haven't worked hard enough. So therefore, I'm definitely not ready for this race and to hit the goals that I want to hit. Again, the difference comes in knowing that it's going to be hard, but just feeling so confident that you will overcome no matter what comes up because you've battled hard consistently. And that's what I've done in the last year and a half of just training for DECA is I've battled so hard, not even just in DECA, but in life. And so I know how resilient I am. And so I just have to trust that, yes, even though it's going to be hard, I have been here before and I can do this. And it was actually crazy. When I was doing the bricks test this Friday, I got to the bike and it was like the last 20 to 30 calories. I was about halfway on the bike. I needed to get to 60. And my legs felt like they were about to fall off. Like I was in so much pain. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to go any further. Like it hurt so badly. And I knew that it would hurt. And I also knew that I have done this before and I can make it through it. I know that I've done so many workouts where I've had these crazy long calorie amounts to push through, and I've done it every single time. So not only was I able to tap into that, but I had this song come on that was called We Came Here for Love. And obviously I didn't come there for the love of dying, but I come here to do these races for this moment right here, to show myself that no matter what circumstances I have that I'm facing, that I can overcome it no matter what. This is what I do. This is what I come here for. And immediately that allowed for me to just like think about, I'm okay. I'm just slightly uncomfortable, but I will persevere. And immediately I took a deep breath and my face relaxed, my shoulders dropped. I closed my eyes and I just focused on my breathing. And yet again, I was able to persevere and do the thing and do it really, really well. A lot faster than I thought I could. In fact, I actually, when I did the original workout just to sim it and see like what it would feel like and get an idea of pacing, my original time was like 16:42. And the time that I did it in this last Friday was 15:35. So I pushed really hard, really hard. And that is just so stinking cool. So another thing that I get to add to my toolbox because I'm not afraid of it hurting, or at least I am being realistic about it hurting, and I'm fully finding those beliefs and eliminating those doubts that I can make it through. All right, last two things. Being inspired of what is possible. This is another one that I don't have fully mastered yet, but I'm working really hard on, is there is always going to be someone that is smarter, stronger, faster, quicker than me. I know that. I can choose to let it bother me and create thoughts to doubt what I bring to the table, or I can use it as proof of what's possible. There have been a handful of times in the last couple of months where I've followed certain athletes, and at first I get really excited because I love just to see their energy and their passion, and it's inspiring to me around what they're doing. And then at some point it starts to turn into a negative where I feel less than, that I'm not training hard enough, that I'm not doing enough, and that I will never be enough. And that's not a byproduct of what they're doing. That's a byproduct of my tendencies and my habits and whatever is going on in my head. And so those have been actually really good opportunities for me to go into that growth space and really ask myself those questions and have the tough conversations to figure out what is the underlying need, what is it at the core level that I need to like fully overcome. And I talked about that, I think, on the podcast the last couple of weeks, is just what a gift it is to have these situations so that way you can deal with what's in the coat closet and no longer suppress it. So it's been wonderful on that standpoint. But there's also just been times where it's like, okay, I'm not fully here yet to where I feel like I can be totally supportive of this athlete and continue to watch them from afar in a way that is healthy for me. So therefore, I need to mute. I need to unfollow. I need to take care of myself. And sometimes that makes me feel like guilty and like a bad person because I want to love and support every single human being. It's not that I'm upset with them. It's just there is like that insecurity within myself of just not enoughness. And so I just share all of that vulnerably, that it's not going to be easy and we all go through it. We all compare ourselves to other people. We all have doubts around ourselves. If you find that you're just not in a space where you're able to deal with it in a healthy way, then work on dealing with it first and shut out those other people for right now, because you need to go internal and not try and juggle both sides right now. But hopefully you can get to this spot where you are able to look at this competition that you are so lucky that you get to put yourself up against every single race and think, wow, they are incredible. I am so excited to one day get to that point because they're showing me that it's totally possible for me too. It's not just they can and I won't. It's me too, just maybe not yet. And that has been a really, really positive change for me, is using them as inspiration, not as a source of doubt. All right, the last thing for how I've become the unstoppable athlete that I am today is this idea of impact over outcomes. When the motivation to train, to compete hard, whatever it is, just isn't there, and you are searching for a reason to do the hard things, there is nothing that I believe that will take you further and out of a rut if you operate with the mindset of impact over outcome. This idea that what's really the most important is the impact that we make on this earth and not necessarily the outcomes that we accomplish. The story, you guys, that I want to be told about me in the long run, after every race, after every training session, whatever it is, like my legacy almost, is I want to be the person that always had the biggest smile in the room, that was always willing to help other people, that was always the loudest cheerleader, the person that also inspired other people because I never gave up when things hit the fan. I just kept going, whether that was the fastest that I could go or whether that was maybe my worst race. Like I just kept going because I wanted to finish it for myself. I think about the fact that I have two of my athletes competing in the Sierra Bricks competition with me, and how lucky I am to be a coach. How lucky I am to not only inspire them to come along on the journey with me, but to get to like lead by example, to get to create that impact on them to where they now get to show themselves what's possible. It's just the coolest thing in the world for me to watch people's light bulbs turn on and watch them go to that place and just fight for themselves. And I am just so lucky that I am in a role and that I have the best job in the world where it allows for me to do that. And so in the moments where, again, I don't want to do the hard things, in the moments where I'm thinking about all the wrong things before, a training session or before a race, I redirect and I think about what is the story that I want to be told about me? What is the legacy that I want to leave? What is the impact that I want to have? And guys, truly, impact is so much more. It is so much more motivating. It is so much more purposeful than achieving a podium spot will ever be. Truly it is. The podium spot will feel good for a second. The impact you create will literally last forever. So here's where I want to leave you today. Chase moments of joy. It's the mantra that I keep close to my heart in the heat of competition preps and right before I do any race. And it reminds me that it is such a gift that I get to live my life showing myself what I'm capable of. And in every moment, whether that be good, bad, or ugly, that joy is always present and just waiting to be recognized. Thank you guys so much for showing up for you today, and I hope that this episode truly helped. If it did, be sure to rate, review the podcast if you haven't already. Share this with friends and family that need to hear this, and just give yourself a big hug, a big high five, pat on the back. Show yourself some love for how strong you really are and the journey that you're on right now to becoming the most unstoppable version of you. I'll see you guys next week with some more good stuff on the Becoming Your Strong podcast. See you then.